It is the highest grossing horror film franchise of all time. With 7 films since its start in 2013, this series has grossed nearly $2 billion. Be sure to grab your flashlights because today it's all about the Conjuring universe. To get us started off, let's take a look at the man behind the horror universe itself. James Wan is a creator of the Conjuring universe. If you're a horror movie fan, chances are you've heard of Wan's name before. Prior to the Conjuring series, Wan is a co-creator of both Saw and Insidious franchises. He also directed Fast and Furious 7, Aquaman, and Aquaman 2. In addition to that, he's also been a producer for a number of films, including 2021's Mortal Kombat, and an executive producer for nearly all of the Saw films. Following the earlier successes in his career with Saw and Insidious series, Wan would then go on to start his own franchise. Released in 2013, the Conjuring film was directed by James Wan, which is no surprise to see him directing the very first film of the series. This film loosely follows the real-life events of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were paranormal investigators. Set back in 1971, this film tells a story of a number of haunting events that take place in a family's Rhode Island farmhouse. This film had a budget of just $20 million, but with some decent reviews and the lack of sleep from a lot of people that saw it, it made an astounding $319 million. Now, 137 of that came from the United States, and this film actually was the 18th highest grossing film of 2013, beating out other movies like The Wolverine and Pacific Rim. Following the massive success of The Conjuring, a sequel was announced shortly after, Annabelle, which was a spin-off that tells the story of the doll in The Conjuring. This film was directed by John Leonetti and James Wan acting as one of the producers. Leonetti was the cinematographer on The Conjuring and had worked on quite a few other projects. Like the previous film, Annabelle was loosely based on the stories from the Warrens' paranormal investigations. Now, this film had a rather small budget of only $6.5 million, but it was able to turn that into over $250 million. They did not just 10x their budget, that was over a 38 times increase. The Conjuring 2 was the next film in the horror universe, and it was a sequel to the original. Directed by James Wan, this film once again follows Ed and Lorraine Warren. This time, they travel to the UK to help a family with paranormal activity. Filming for just 50 days, this movie was released in June of 2016. The budget, though, was double that of the first, costing $40 million. However, it just barely grossed more than the original, making a clean $320 million compared to the underachieving $319 of the first. 2017 saw the return of the very creepy doll. In this film, Annabelle Creation, David Sandberg would direct this movie and go on to direct Shazam and the 2023 sequel. This film was a prequel to the original 2014 Annabelle and unsurprisingly tells a story of the doll's creation. Fun fact, the real-life Annabelle looks quite different from the porcelain one portrayed in the film. The real-life version is a Raggedy Ann doll, which was apparently owned by a student nurse during the 1970s. The real-life Ed and Lorraine Warren declared the doll possessed and put it in their occult museum. Shifting back to the movie, Annabelle Creation was another lower budget film with only $15 million to work with. However, they were able to make a very impressive $306 million, which was almost $50 million more than the first Annabelle. What's creepier than a doll, you might wonder? Well, how about an immortal nun demon? The Nun was a best-selling film of the franchise and fought its way to the 344th best-selling movie of all time. This film pulled off a miracle by turning that modest $22 million budget into a $365.5 million gross. Taking place back in 1952, located in Romania, it involves some truly terrifying scenes that eventually end up showing the events that led to The Conjuring. Chronologically, this film is the first of the franchise, but release date-wise, it was the 5th one to come out. The Curse of La Llorona was the next film to be added to the horror universe. Armed with a production budget of only $9 million, director Michael Chavez would make his feature film debut, with this film released in 2019. Out of all the films in the Conjuring universe, this one performed the worst, bringing in only $123 million. Critics and audience members weren't the biggest fans of the heavy jump scares that the film was filled with, resulting in a rather low review score. Chavez would not be dismayed by this, however, as we're going to see in a little bit. Next up, that creepy doll is back at it again, starring the titular nightmare machine itself. Annabelle Comes Home gets a large budget increase up to $27 million, and it puts the money to work well, bringing in over $230 million. If you do not want to go to sleep, then this movie might just be for you. 5 years after The Conjuring 2, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It is the newest film set for release. Director Michael Chavez returns to direct this movie, and this film is going to include the characters of Ed and Lorraine Warren as they continue in their paranormal investigations. Now, while we don't have a budget for this film yet, let's make an educated guess. The second Conjuring film had the highest budget of the series at $40 million. For our estimates, we're going to put it between $35 to $45 million. What do you think the budget's going to end up being? Let us know with a comment down below. In addition to this, a sequel for The Nun and a film titled The Crooked Man are set for pre-production right now. Time for the scariest part of the whole story, the lawsuits. The biggest one comes from Gerald Brittle, who wrote the book on the Warrens. He sued Warner Bros. For $900 million, feeling that he held exclusive rights to the Warren story. It turns out that Tony DeRosa, who worked as a producer on the first film, was pulling the strings of the lawsuit the whole time, and even reviewing all the lawyers' contacts to Brittle before they were sent. Eventually, the lawsuit was dropped. The second major lawsuit was from the owners of the house used in The Conjuring. Their property has been vandalized ever since The Conjuring's release in 2013. They were seeking an undisclosed amount for the damage, often finding things from cults littering all over their property. With a total of 7 films and a budget of these movies coming in at $139.5 million, overall they've grossed totally $1.9 billion and a total runtime of 751 minutes. This breaks out to $2.5 million for every minute of movie. Let us know what your favorite film of the Conjuring universe is with a comment down below. Also, if you like the breakdown of your favorite movies, TV shows, and video games, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more content like this. I'm your host Tom with The Financial Fixation, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video.